Hi everyone, Fatscraps here. Just a quick explanation. After I made this tasty recipe of fake spaghetti ragu, homemade noodles, and homemade bread, I realized that the video was way too long. So I tried my editing skills, as best as they are, to make 3 separate videos, each one with its own tasty recipe. So now you will understand why some of the edits and transitions are a little bit rough, but they are still tasty recipes. Thank you and enjoy fake spaghetti ragu, homemade noodles, and homemade bread. Okay, but first we're going to do 2 things with dough. We're going to make homemade noodles to go with our fake spaghetti ragu, and we're going to make bread. And we need to start the bread first because it takes time to rise. So for this recipe, you're going to need flour, of course, and I like to use unbleached flour simply because they use less chemicals in it. They use chemicals to bleach flour, so that's what I do. Whatever flour you want is great. You'll need a cup of water, and you're going to need a teaspoon of salt and 1 package of yeast. But because you're going to see how easy it is to make bread, you're probably going to want to go out and buy a big jar of it because you're going to be making bread for all your friends and family. All right, this recipe is very easy. It's a basic bread recipe, Italian bread, and it calls for about 2.5 to 3 cups of flour. So let's start out. I'm going to start out with about 2.5 cups of flour. And please remember not to scoop your cup in there because that packs it in, so then you actually get more flour than what you think you're getting, and it just works a little bit easier. So this is about 2.5 cups of flour. Then add your yeast and your salt and mix that around, and then add your cup of water. And that's it. So just mix this around. Now, you can of course use a spoon, a spatula, or if you really get into this, you can buy a stand mixer and use that. I usually use a stand mixer because it just saves a few minutes, but I'm doing it by hand so you can see how easy this is. So get this started to mix together. And once it is mixed together enough that it's not all runny and everything, then just dump it out. And if you have a dough board, that's awesome. And if not, I've actually done it just on a regular size cutting board, or I've actually done it on my counter too. So anyway, so take some time and knead your dough. Okay, I've been kneading my dough for a couple minutes now, and as you can see, it is turning kind of silky, and that's really nice, and it's not sticking to my board too bad, so I am not going to add any more flour. And remember, God gave us the heel of our hand so that we can knead bread. So I'm going to knead this now for a couple more minutes, and then we'll just put it to the side and let it raise. I've been kneading this for about 5 minutes, and you can see that it is nice and smooth and everything's been incorporated in it. And so I'm just going to put it right back in the bowl. Now, some recipes say grease the bowl so the dough doesn't stick to it. You can do that, but I found that you really don't need to do it. It doesn't stick that bad, so you can do that. Now, some people like to cover it with plastic wrap. And the reason we cover it is so that the top doesn't dry out and get crusty. But what I like to do is I like to get a clean dish towel with chickens on it, if you have that, and get it damp. So we'll get it damp. And then we'll just put it over the top of that, and we're done. Now it's nice and warm today, so I'll just leave it out, and we're going to let it rise for about an hour to an hour and a half, and then we'll go from there. Now some people say, oh, I can't make bread because it just takes too much time. Actually, it doesn't take that much time. It only takes time because it needs to rise, and that's a perfect time to have a cup of coffee, look at your Facebook page, read your emails, have some time for yourself. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have some coffee, which is all ready. I'm going to rest a little bit, and then I'll be back and we'll start making our homemade noodles. Well, our dough has been raising for about an hour and a quarter or so, and it looks very nice. So, what you do now, just scrape that out of the bowl. Look at that beautiful dough. And you just don't want to knead it too much more, but just knead it enough so that you can shape it. There's a myriad ways that you can shape your bread dough. You can freeform it in a ball, or you can make a baguette. Actually, this is more like a French loaf here. Or you can grease a regular loaf pan and put it in there. Now what I do is that I just happen to have a French loaf pan. And so I just put it in my French loaf pan, and I like using parchment paper instead of greasing it, just because that's what I like to do. I put it in there, and voila, we're done. So we're going to let this rise for about 45 minutes. We'll cover it again with our damp towel, and we'll come back to this and pop it in the oven then. See what the dough looks like. Oh, that looks beautiful, doesn't it? So now I set the oven to 375, and once the oven is preheated and it's all hot, we'll be ready to go. I like to slice my bread a little bit so that when it does that first rise in the oven, it doesn't break the sides of the bread. Well, as you heard, the oven is ready, so let's pop this in. Well, our bread's been cooking for about 25 minutes, baking for 25 minutes, so let's get it out of the oven. And here it is. Oh, isn't that nice? So now our bread is all ready to go, and we'll be waiting to have this fresh bread with our spaghetti ragu in about an hour.